But what they're saying to us is unless something changes, very probably, we are the last generation of what will be called pure humans. I was in a conference recently, I was on a panel, and I had a very well-known scientist. He said to me, well, Greg, isn't this the next step in human evolution? Aren't we meant to merge our biology with technology, to merge our carbon with silica? And I said, no, we're not. He said, isn't that the next step in evolution? I said, it's a false evolution. It's a forced evolution. And we have to say that because if we follow this path of evolution, we lose aspects of our humanness. The proposals that are being put forward by organizations like World Economic Forum, working through the United Nations, for example, they are talking about technology being introduced to all humans at the time of birth by the year 2030. What we're not being told is the downside, because when a chip begins doing what we do naturally, we lose those cognitive abilities. They begin to atrophy and die in one generation, and through epigenetics, the next generation, pretty soon, we are no longer functioning the way we have in the past. So the transhuman movement is the movement to replace much of our, either augment or replace much of our biology with synthetics and with technology. And that movement is what we're talking about here. They're pushing very quickly to introduce so much of this by the year 2030, this magic year 2030, for a lot of reasons. There's an organization that's been around since 1971, World Economic Forum. We've all heard of the Davos meetings, and that's the WEF, and they meet usually once, sometimes twice a year, which they have every right to do, and talk about their view of what the world should be. There's another box, United Nations. I'm just going to say, when I was a kid, the United Nations was the great hope of this planet. And the UN we have now, there are good people there, they do good things, and there are some good programs. It's not the same UN. It's been hijacked in many respects. And one of the places where it's been hijacked, most of us have heard about something called the UN Sustainable Development Goals for the year 2030. This year comes up a lot, UN SDG 2030. 17 beautiful goals. You look at them on the website, who wouldn't want them? The end of poverty, who doesn't want that? Food security, who doesn't want that? The end of disease for children, who doesn't want that? Now you look at the fine print of how they hope to achieve those goals. And this is where it becomes very problematic, because the way to achieve those goals is for us to surrender much of our humanness. And these two organizations signed a formal agreement in the year 2019 that the WEF would implement its ideas through the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, and that's concerning because we are legally bound as a nation to follow some of the principles. The World Health Organization is a function of the UN, for example. And we saw this a few years ago of how much control they attempted to exert on global populations. But in a single sentence, he summed up the goal of where they hope to move in these next 4.5 years. In the single sentence, the way to achieve these goals is to merge our natural world with our digital world. And then there's a long pause because he knows the implications of what he's about to say. And he says, with our biological identities, regulating where we travel, what we eat. We are taught from a very early age that we are a flawed form of life, that we are a flawed carbon-based form of life by virtue of our existence, and that we need something outside of ourselves to be the best version of ourselves. That makes us victims. And if you're a victim, you need a savior, and the savior is being touted as technology. Now, what we know, that's the setup right there. Young people, when they come to our live events, they worship AI, they worship the computer chips. Nobody's ever told them, first of all, how rare and precious human biology really is. And we can talk about that and why I believe that is true and why I believe we're worth preserving as a species. But nobody's ever taught them that we not only meet, but we exceed the capacity of many of those technologies.